Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monomami wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. And please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Lauren Piland. She is here to celebrate Blooming Rose Blast Off, book number 1 in the Blooming Rose series. Before we invite Lauren into the studio, we have a special message for all the authors and aspiring authors who are listening to the podcast. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and we encourage you to click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. We have a worldwide audience here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, and they want to hear about your book. You can be a guest here in the podcast and in a long-form conversation. Tell the world about your fantastic book. Tell them about your inspiration. Tell them about you. It's a wonderful way to build your brand. And I know you're sitting down thinking, I'm just a little author. I don't have a brand. No, actually you do. You have a brand, and we'd love to help you celebrate that brand. You can also find out how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. We also have a wonderful monthly promotion program that can celebrate your book through commercials here on the podcast, messages to our 100,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book in whatever live event we happen to be part of in a given month. Learn all about that and more by going to readingwithyourkids.com and clicking on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Join us right now from the great state of Texas. Our guest today is here to celebrate the first book in her Blooming Rose series. Please welcome to the show, Lauren Piland. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
I'm delighted to have you here. Tell us all about Blooming Rose, please.
So Blooming Rose, we have our first title in our series out now called Blooming Rose Blast Off. And this whole series is kind of centered around our main character, Rose, who is a little girl about 7, 8 years old, and her best friend, Brady, and just some of the adventures and things that they go through. This first collection is really what I call the feelings collection, because each title kind of ties back to some kind of emotional or, support kind of tool or conversation that we can have with our kids at home and in the classroom. And Blooming Rose Blast Off kind of highlights, having to work hard and perseverance.
I think that is that whole idea of working hard and persevering and being resilient and having grit. I think that's a concept that a lot of us have kind of lost over the past 20 or so years. It seems like, parents were all about protecting their kids and wrapping them up in bubble wrap and having every minute of their day scheduled so they can't possibly be bored, they can't possibly get hurt, they can't possibly feel any kind of disappointment. Right.
I definitely think that. I was in the classroom, so I saw it with my students, and then now, I'm a mom of 2 young kids, so I definitely see it at home as well. But this whole series is like just putting out there that your feelings are okay. Something that you come across something difficult, that's okay. Hard work, it's okay to get down there and have to put in a little bit more practice. Especially when we talk about the different personalities and different strengths and different weaknesses each kid is going to bring to the table, which is a beautiful thing. You don't have to look at it like, oh, well, science in this project, Blooming Rose Blast Off is about a rocket launcher project that Rose is just not excited about. Like, science is just not her jam. Like, she likes to, writing and creative things, and she doesn't think she's going to be as involved with a science project until she really dives in and has some encouragement and, starts testing things out. And, by the end of the story, you kind of see whether she actually ends up enjoying it.
Yeah.
And trying things over and over again is okay. That's how we learn.
I think that's it is. And making mistakes and trying it again and figuring out where your mistake was. And, we kind of understand this when it comes to sports, we're not going to be great. The greatest baseball hitter fails 60, 65, 70% of the time. But we don't kind of bring that over into our lives to understand that, hey, we don't have to be perfect. We learn from our attempts. And I really love what you present about Rose, that she's doesn't think that she likes science, that she'd rather be creative and she'd rather do fun, artsy kind of things, and she sees science as this kind of stale, learn the facts and figures kind of thing, when in reality she gets to discover that there's a lot of creativity and science in the STEM fields.
Right. It is, the character Rose is kind of based on the likeness of my daughter, Avery Rose, but of course the stories are fictional, but it all kind of ties into everything that kids can relate to. And, I see her kind of stumble. Of course, the things that we're most interested in, we're going to dive right in. We're going to want to learn. We're going to want to keep practicing and, things like that. And it's just the more mysterious stuff that we haven't really, maybe learned about yet or given a chance yet, where we have to really, get over some hurdles, maybe some obstacles or some challenges to get to that, might end up being the most rewarding and, open our kids up to things that they didn't even think that they'd be interested in.
Yeah. In your experience, have you found that the kids who say, well, I don't like that, I'm not going to eat that, I don't like it, when they're saying I don't like it, they're really saying, I've never tried that.
Right. It's like, I've never experienced this before. Mm-hmm. So, in adults, it's the same way. So a lot of kids' books, adults can read it and probably get stuff from it too. But, even as an adult, if there's something, I started this business, right? Bloom and Rose, the series is a book series, but now it's also a business. And there's a lot of learning curve that goes along, writing the story is all fun and picking illustrations. That's all the fun part. But on the back end, you have to know how to run a business or learn things like sales tax and, reporting, things like that. And as an adult, that wasn't fun. And it's okay to not always love everything you're doing, but once you kind of sit down and just kind of make yourself, as an adult or as a kid, kind of charge through it, then you're like, oh, yeah, it wasn't so bad as I thought. Yeah. Take the time to figure it out, and it's okay to do that. Yeah. We're not going to be hitting home runs at bat every time. Yeah. It's okay to stumble and learn as we go.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one of the things that I find, first off, congratulations on understanding that when you wrote Blooming Rose, you were starting a business. I think, right. I take the time to mention that because there are so many authors, especially indie authors, who don't understand that and, see themselves as an artist. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm creative. I don't do that business stuff. Well, if you don't do the business stuff, no one's going to read your book. So that's really important. So congratulations for grasping and embracing that. You're also doing something different in that, when I'm reading on your website, you refer to Blooming Rose not only as a series, but as a curriculum. Can you talk about, that just making that decision that, okay, it's more than just a couple of fun books. I'm really sitting down and I'm going to develop a curriculum around this.
Right. So that's the teacher brain in me, once a teacher, always a teacher. So I did teach, for 4 short years. I taught second grade and then I taught art, elementary art, and I loved it. But as many of you know, there's a lot of, again, roadblocks and things that come into teaching. And at the time, I just ended up staying home with my second child. But I knew I wasn't really done being in the classroom. And I felt like I was leaving students that were struggling behind. I felt like I was leaving colleagues and teachers that were struggling, friends behind. And that's really that first summer I stayed home is where I came up with this series as a whole. So I have 7 titles in the Blooming Rose series. And like I said, they all kind of play off different emotional struggles or conversations to have in the classroom or at home. But then I also have academic bundles that go along with it. So I wanted these to really easily slide into lesson plans. When teachers do read alouds in the classroom, then they can follow that up with center work or independent work that has, reading comprehension, vocabulary strategies, writing prompts, STEM exercises was important, and really a character building exercise as well. And they can even use those at home too. So if you're a parent or a grandparent, or if you're homeschooling, or if you like to read books during the summer with your kids and give them a little extra, activities to do when they're not at school. I just found that the academic bundles is what I call them, the beyond the text bundles. I feel like they can be so beneficial and used in so many different ways to really extend the thinking, really continue that conversation, like long after the book is done,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that you hear from parents is, oh, my kid loves that book, but I don't want to read it for the 500th time. I think these bundles give families a way to experience the book in a different way every time they read it.
It also has an activity. One of my favorite activities is called Think Like an Author and Think Like an Illustrator, where they get to come up with the next page of Blooming Rose. Like after it ends, what do you think happens next? And then it's a partially illustrated, kind of story layout that they get to embellish and make it their own as well. So that would be kind of a fun activity for them to do.
Very cool.
After they read, yeah.
Tommy, I'm always fascinated in the process that authors and illustrators have, and I always love asking authors of fantasies who are creating these universes, what's the process and what comes first, the story or the universe, or you just kind of make up things as the story's going along. You're not creating a fantasy universe, but you're creating this curriculum with all these supportive features and products. What is the process for you? Are you sitting down and you have this master plan all laid out with, we're going to take the story in this way, and that's going to, do that bundle and that bundle. I want this kind of STEM bundle, so we have to add this to the story. Or is it just story and then we write the accompanying things after the story is created?
Yes, as a teacher, I'm definitely a planner. So I do like to plan out, but I will say I did the stories, probably all the summaries for the stories first, just because I really wanted to concentrate as the series as a whole of being like this toolkit, right? You can use it in the classroom, or counselors can use it as a character building thing. And I really wanted to make sure I covered a lot of the different aspects that, kids come across and we could have conversations about. So the stories were first, and then after that, I kind of came up with the bundles that go along with it. So you don't have to read the stories in any particular order. You don't have to necessarily read the story before you do some of the bundle activities. But yeah, I just kind of kept building on it. I also have a background in marketing. Mm-hmm. So from a marketing perspective, I, thought of a theme for each story, how I want the covers to look and how I want them all to go, be cohesive. And we have a logo for our brand and, things like that. So there's been a lot of planning behind the scenes, mm-hmm. for sure.
Sounds like it. So you mentioned, I think you said there's 7 titles. There'll eventually be 7 titles? Right,
eventually. So we're definitely doing the next 2. I'm hoping to release the next one next year, 2023, or whenever this airs in 2023. That's going to be Blooming Rose Finds Her Jam. And so that one's going to speak to the music, the power that music has, not only in times of celebration and excitement, like when we get together and bringing people together and having, good times, but they also learn how to use it later in times of, calm or anxiety, or even sadness, where you're really relating to the music and helping those emotions kind of surface. And then the third title is Blooming Rose Chills Out, which uses yoga and breathing techniques to kind of help kids self-regulate when they get in, some frustrating situations. Mm-hmm. So that's the first 3 of the 7. And then there probably will be another follow-up series after that as well.
Wow. You are a business person.
I was going to say, if the business numbers have to make sense, of course, mm-hmm. So we got to do one book, get one book out before we start on book 2. But yeah. Hopefully that will be a lot of stepping stones to get down the road.
Now, you were mentioning to me before we started that here in the fall of 2022, you have a soft launch, but you're having the full retail launch is happening in January?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So what has the response been so far as you're slowly rolling out Blooming Rose?
Right. So we opened up pre-orders. And so what I just mean by a soft launch is I'm hybrid publishing through Mascot Books. And we're printing off, we printed in bulk, and I got a certain amount of copies, which I was pretty aggressive with the copies that I wanted. So I have a lot of my own copies to sell, and then kind of half went to me and half is going to Mascot. So in January, Mascot will have their deals done with Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So everything will be, kind of in stock on their end. But I got my books in hand here in October. And I just couldn't wait any longer. So I started promoting, as what I call a soft launch, where you can buy books through my website or at in-person events starting now. So
that must be fun. What's it like having this dream realized to receive those first books in your hand?
I kind of imagine that moment a lot. You go through this process that from signing the contract to getting the books in hand was over a year. So you kind of envisioned this moment for a long time. And I think I was so caught up in, okay, the books are finally here. I have a lot of pre-orders to sell out. We did a launch team. Everything's been going really great. And I kind of got caught up in the logistics of it. I think in that moment, I thought I'd open the box and, start crying. But I was like, okay, they're here. Let's go. Let's get them signed. Let's get them mailed out. And it wasn't maybe until like a few days after that or a week after where people started sending me pictures and sending me little reviews and stories of how their kids are so excited and now they want to go build their own rockets. And, just really seeing the books in kids' hands, that I kind of had this little moment like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is happening. This is out in the world now. And it's a pretty surreal feeling.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned that you were a teacher, I think, second grade?
Yeah, I taught second grade in art. Mm-hmm.
So second grade, and I'm imagining there were times that you would read aloud to your second graders, and I'm imagining there might have been a favorite book that you had that you enjoyed reading the most. Do you remember what that was?
That I remembered reading to them. I remember we kind of started with the early chapter readers in second grade. So just reading in their classroom is kind of what I remember the most, just off the top of my head was really letting them get into those books, at that age level. They're reading on their own, being able to pick their own books or being able to, get excited about what's going to happen next. You'd read a chapter and they'd be all into it and they'd want to keep reading, be like, oh, wait, we're going to read the rest of it tomorrow, and they'd be so invested in really seeing that learning light bulb, that reading light bulb kind of go off for them, is really fun. So I remember we did Charlotte's Web, of course. But of course there's a million, great picture books out there as well. And so when they can use the pictures and kind of start piecing together the words, on their own is exciting to see. And my daughter, she's in second grade now. So she kind of started that last year in first grade where she really wanted to, just start reading on her own and starting her journey of literature. So that's fun.
The reason I asked is I'm wondering, as a teacher, it brought you lots of joy seeing your kids develop that passion and love of reading.
Right.
I'm wondering if you've taken the time to let it sink in that at some point next year, a couple of years, there's going to be a classroom somewhere where a teacher is going to be looking forward to reading Blooming Rose to their kids. And Blooming Rose is going to be the catalyst that launches a kid's love for reading.
Oh, well, I never really thought about it like that, and that is so sweet. But yeah, so we have it in some of my daughter's classroom has copies, and they're going to be reading it when I get there next week. I'm doing a read aloud with them. But my daughter the other day they had costume day. It was right after Halloween here, right now. But and she wanted to dress up as Blooming Rose. So for her character day, for her to want to do Blooming Rose. And I said, well, really, you can do anything else. You know, everybody else is going to be wearing a costume. And she's like, no, I want to be Blooming Rose. So when that kind of hit me that kids are going to be a fan of this book or a fan of Rose, I hope. And we have little character shirts that are going to be coming out so that they can, you know, wear a shirt like Rose wears in the story. I mean, I really think there's no greater goal in mind. You know, yeah, as a business person, money is, you know, earning money is important, but when you have kids that are loving your books and your materials, I mean, that's really the end goal. So that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Tell me, you mentioned that you have 2 daughters and that Blooming Rose is based on one of your daughters. Are you going to have to come up with another character, another series for your other daughter?
I do. I have a daughter and a son, actually. Okay. And so my son is in the book. It's, the little brother is named Rex, which Avery, my daughter Avery, lovingly titled him, or named him T-Rex when I was pregnant with him. She totally thought that he was going to be T-Rex, and my husband was actually on board with it. But, so his name is not T-Rex, but in the book, his name is Rex. And so the next series, so after Blooming Rose, is going to have her 7 titles in the Feelings collection, and Adventure Rex is going to be the next series that's going to have another 7 titles in his collection, because obviously he has to have his own series now too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, before I let you go, as a teacher of kids, and as a 2nd grade teacher, you're teaching kids about reading, and it's really kind of helping to instill that love of reading. I read a very disturbing statistic that 130 million Americans are unable to read beyond a basic 5th or 6th grade level. That to me is, number one, it's really hard to believe. It's shocking. It's horrifying. What can we do to change that? How, you know, other than just everybody running out and buying Blooming Rose, but what can we do? What can we do as a society to really help change that? I mean, that's 1/3 of our population.
Right. So I actually did a family literacy festival here in Houston a couple weeks ago, because the statistics here in Houston, just the greater Houston area, you know, something like less than 20% of our 7th and 8th graders are reading on grade level. And it's a combination, I think. You know, stories like Blooming Rose, you know, everyone wants to jump into academics, right? You get to school, this is what you're going to learn about. You know, you have all these state testing standards, and curriculum and everything that is literally orchestrated minute by minute throughout the day to jam all this academic stuff in. And from what my experience is that sure, there's a lot of students that come ready to learn, and there's a lot of loving families out there. I'm not saying that there are, but we have varying percentages in each campus, in each district, in each city, where we have kids in crisis, and they come to school not knowing where their next meal is, not knowing what they're going to be facing, you know, after school. You know, some of their situations are just terrifying, actually. And, so those students don't come to school ready to learn, right? And then that kind of snowballs into more behavioral outbursts, and those are classroom distractions. And not only that student, but that whole classroom, that teacher, the whole campus gets, you know, kind of inundated with these kinds of problems. And so from my experience, I think we need to incorporate more levels where we can really connect with them, where we can build those relationships. You know, where we're building relationships where they can trust their teachers and they can trust their classmates, and they can really feel safe there and open up, and, you know, are more susceptible to being able to learn.
Well, let's hope we're able to make that happen, because we need to change that. In the meantime, where can people go to find out more about Blooming Rose and more about you?
Right. So everything we have is on our website, bloomingrosekids.com. So you can buy the book there. There's information about our title, the next titles, about the bundles, about author visits, all that fun stuff. We also are pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. So our handles there are at Blooming Rose Kids. We have videos on YouTube that go along with the bundles, that go along with our journey. So if you're an author that wants a little bit more about the publication journey, we're on YouTube as well. So we're trying to be a little bit everywhere.
Awesome. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author and the entrepreneur, the driving force behind the Blooming Rose series, Lauren Piland. Hey, Lauren, thanks so much for being with us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Enrique Mores. He is the publisher and the driving force behind Syncretic Press. He's bringing books and authors and illustrators from Latin America to the United States. He has some really fascinating insights and the differences between books published in the States and books published in Latin America. We'll also be joined by Stephanie Davila. She'll be joining us. In fact, she'll be joining us from Ecuador. So that's the next episode of the podcast. If you are a parent, please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I encourage you to use the contact button at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Lauren Piland. Please be sure to check out Blooming Rose Blast Off, book number 1 in the Blooming Rose series. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Stephanie Davila. I want to welcome Will Cheever to the team. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.